Well, hello everyone. I hope you're having a great day today. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Take 5. We are in a series that we started a couple of weeks ago at church. We've entitled this thing Hidden or Forgotten, and we're talking about the necessity and the importance of reading and studying and getting the Word of God in our heart and our mind on a daily basis. We've been using Psalm 119 verse 11 through 16 as our text. I just want to read the first and last verse of that series of verses. Verse 11 says, "Your word have I hidden in my heart that I might not sin against you." And verse 16 says, "I will delight myself in your statutes. I will not forget your word." Verse 11 says, "I've hidden it in my heart." Verse 16 says, "I will not forget it." That's where we get the title, Hidden or Forgotten. And we're trying to determine, what are we doing with the Word of God? Are we hiding it in our hearts so we become more like Christ? Or are we just forgetting about it and being indifferent to it and just kind of pushing it aside? Which one are we doing? Now, we're going to this week, we're going to blend into this 2 Timothy chapter 3. Paul is giving some advice to that young protege of his named Timothy. He's giving some advice to him about how he is going to have to endure in some very perilous times. As a matter of fact, if you read in the first 5 verses of 2 Timothy 3, Paul tells him how perilous times are going to be, and how sin is just going to be rampant, and how things are just going to seem to get worse and worse. And by the time you get to verse 13, he actually says, we read this yesterday, that evil men will get worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. And so from that mindset, you kind of think that sin's going to get worse or get more powerful. I don't believe that. I shared that with you yesterday. I believe from the bottom of my heart that the reason that it seems like that sin gets worse and worse is because people are reading the Bible less and less and using the Bible less and less. And when we don't use the Bible to restrain that sin nature, there's no bottom to what sin will do. So that's the important thing. Now, how do we overcome this? If that's a fact that that's happening, and we looked at some statistics from Barna and the American Bible Society yesterday. If this is a fact that people are using the Bible less and less, which means that we're going to see more of sin and less of God, how do we overcome this? What do we do? And so Paul's advice to young Timothy was sufficient instruction concerning this as well. Verse 14 of 2 Timothy 3, he said, "But you," after he told them about all these things that are going to happen and how evil men are going to seem to get worse and worse, the very next verse he said, "But you." That in itself says a lot. When he said, "But you," that means I've got to take responsibility for me. I can't push it off. I can't blame it on somebody else. I can't expect my pastor to do it. I can't expect what my mom knew or anybody else knew or the people before me. I can't expect any of that. It's got to be me. Paul said, "But you must continue in the things you've learned and been assured of, knowing from whom you have learned them." So he says the solution to that is to continue in the Word when others are not. When 75%, we read yesterday, are hardly using the Bible at all. 75% of the American people are hardly using it at all. He says that we will overcome this, but we must continue in the Word. So to continue, what does that mean? You look that word up in the original Greek and it means to dwell, to remain, to abide, and to stay in a given place. That means we get the word, we get it in us, we apply it, and we don't alter from it, regardless of what people say or think, or regardless of how times change. This is one thing that we do not alter from. God is not changing His word. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's not changing what He said in His word. And in order to survive these evil times, we have got to continue in the word. That's what Paul told Timothy, and that's what you and I have got to do as well. We must abide in the Word of God if we're going to overcome the spirits of the last days. Jesus said in John 15, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you can ask what you will and it will be done. And then in John 8, he said, if you continue in my word, you're my disciples indeed. So what Paul was telling Timothy when he said to continue and to abide and dwell, that wasn't something new. That was something that Jesus had already been telling his disciples the whole time. Verse 15, let's look at that real quick. From a child you have known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith, which is in Jesus Christ. If you know anything about Timothy, his grandmother Lois and his mother Eunice had taught him the Word of God from the time he was old enough to hear it. Later on, Paul taught Timothy the deeper truths of the Word, but now Paul, the teacher, is telling the student, you must continue in the things you've learned. You've got to do this on your own and continue in what you've been taught. If you're going to overcome the world, the flesh, and the devil, you have got to stay in the Word. Now, I realize it's our pastors and our teachers' responsibility to feed the flock of God, but it's also the responsibility of every born-again believer to read and study the Bible on a daily basis. Pastors can only feed us a few times a week, but we need the Word of God every day in our lives if we're to overcome sin and be transformed into the image of Christ. When Moses gave instructions to the children of Israel about the Word, this is what he told them. He said, be sure to teach it to your children and talk about it when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. In other words, often as you can and then some. Get the Word of God into your life. That's how you overcome sin. That's how you overcome the world. And that's how we hide this Word in our heart so we do not sin against God. Well, hey, I've got to get out of here. It's been good being with you today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow on Wednesday's edition of Take 5. Until then, God bless you. Have a great day. Remember, friend, trust the Lord. He will never fail you.